I'm going to read an excerpt from the book Killing Grounds on Okinawa, The Battle for Sugarloaf Hill by James H. Hallas. I'm going to read an excerpt in the words of James Delbert Denny, born in 1927. So I'm going to start with the preface and then move on to Mr. Denny's words, from the first paragraph before his words and the last paragraph after he's done speaking. The preface states as follows. Killing Ground on Okinawa, The Battle for Sugarloaf Hill, by James H. Hallas. On May 12, 1945, the 6th Marine Division was nearing Naha, capital of Okinawa. To the division's front lay a loaf-shaped hill. It looked no different from other hills seized with relative ease over the past few days. But this hill, soon to be dubbed Sugarloaf, was very different indeed. Part of a complex of the three hills, Sugarloaf formed the western anchor of General Mitsuru Yorijima's Shuri Line, which stretched from coast to coast across the island. Sugarloaf was critical to the defense of that line, preventing U.S. forces from turning the Japanese flank. Over the next week, the Marines made repeated attacks on the hill, losing thousands of men to death, wounds, and combat fatigue. Not until May 18th was Sugarloaf finally seized. 2 days later, the Japanese mounted a battalion-sized counterattack in an effort to regain their lost position, but the Marines held. Ironically, these losses may not have been necessary. General Lemuel Shepard Jr. had argued for an amphibious assault to the rear of the Japanese defense line, but his proposal was rejected by U.S. 10th Army Commander General Simon Bolivar Buckner. That refusal led to a controversy that has continued to this day. Now, I'm starting on page 151, the words of James Delbert Denny in 1944 at the Battle of Sugarloaf Hill. Meanwhile, East Company reoriented the assault platoons and at 1700 launched an attack by 1st and 3rd platoons up Sugarloaf's northeast slope. Among the 3rd Platoon Marines was Private First Class Jim Denny, an 18-year-old West Virginian who had joined up right out of high school and was now acting runner for his platoon. When we made the first rush on Sugarloaf, we came across that big field, that real big field, he recalled, and we were being shelled. We were just hopping and skipping and hitting the ground. One of the first to be killed was Gunnery Sergeant James Kreiner. He was a pretty tough old bird, observed Denny. He was the heavyweight champion of the service, I think, in 30. We were just running 15 or 20 yards and hitting the dirt. Shells were coming in. He got a direct hit with a shell. The platoon made it on to Sugarloaf. Denny's platoon leader, Lieutenant Gilman Wales, sent him back to inform Messenger and ask for instructions. Denny ran back and delivered the message. "Will you go back and just tell him to hold on," replied Messenger. By the time Denny got back to Wales, the Marines had already been pushed off the hill. By now there was only 10 men left of the 1st platoon and only 25 in the 3rd. Wales and the remnants of the 3rd platoon had taken shelter in a ditch about 50 yards from the hill. Japanese were visible among the crest, sticking their heads up real fast as they fired on the ditch. The Marines crouched low, firing back at the bobbing heads. Denny was known to have a strong throwing arm, and after a time Lieutenant Wales called him over. He told Denny to take a case of grenades and make his way up to the left of the hill at the base. He wanted me to throw the grenades and get their attention over there and do it pretty fast so they'd think it was more than one person. Their idea was to go around the other side, recalled Denny. Denny scrambled forward and with the case of grenades and found cover by a big shell hole at the base of Sugarloaf near the eastern corner. It was 5 feet deep, I guess, and probably 7 feet at the top, he recalled. It looked like a hell of a big shell had hit there. Pulling out the grenades, he began hurling them over the top of the hill as fast as he could. The Japanese retaliated, showering Denny with grenades of their own. He caught quick glimpses of a head or an arm as they bobbed up to pitch grenades at him. The Japanese were so close, Denny could hear the metallic click as they armed the grenade detonators by wrapping them on their helmets. As Denny pitched his last grenade, he ducked back into the bottom of the shell hole. An enemy grenade landed in the hole with him, but he managed to grab it and hurl it back out before it exploded. A second grenade plopped into the hole, and he tossed that one out too. Then a third grenade dropped in. The third one rolled right down against me, and I picked it up, and just as I was getting ready to throw it, I got real nervous and the thing hit the top of the bank and rolled, and then I dove back into the hole, he recalled. It was just a big round crater-like. and that thing rolled against my leg, and I kicked, and when I did it, moved a little bit, and I guess that really saved my leg. Even so, the explosion drove chunks of metal through the top of his foot and out of the bottom and peppered his legs, arms, and body with fragments. As Denny struggled to climb out of the hole, a Japanese rifle slug ricocheted off the ground and hit him under the arm, driving through the base of his neck. Back at the ditch, the attack had not gotten off, and one of Denny's buddies, a Marine by the name of Jim Doyle, saw that Denny was in trouble. The next thing Denny knew, Doyle was running towards him across the open field. Doyle dragged him up to his feet, and we run back, and I had that doggone blood coming out of me everywhere. But I was able to run with him hanging onto his shoulder. He saved my life. The Marines reorganized and pushed up again. Again they were swept off the hill. A third attempt to take the top failed. A lot of the fire was coming out of caves, and you weren't sure which cave it was coming out of, remarked a Marine of the fighting among the hills. More men were hit. Lying in the ditch, Denny saw one of his platoon mates killed without a warning. The shell hit him right in the neck, and he just lost his head, said Denny. It just shot his head off. Private First Class Calvin Christopher was shot while following his sergeant's orders to locate some fire support. The bullet hammered through the magazine of his rifle, exploding the full clip before glancing off and driving onto his right shoulder, along with fragments of metal and wood from the rifle. It also ripped open the last 2 fingers of his right hand. I was done after that, recalled Christopher. Some machine gunner, I can't remember his name, helped dress my wound at that time. I congregated with a guy named Ken Clicquot from Indiana, who was shot through the shoulder blade, and another fellow named Price, shot through the calf of his leg, and Ryder from Revere, Massachusetts, shot through a creak of his screen made by our shot through a creak of his ass. We made it off the hill about the same time under a cover of smoke screen made by our tank men to hide their tanks from Jap artillery fire. One of his buddies helped him stop the bleeding, gave him a sulfa tablet, and watched as Christopher was loaded onto an Amtrak and evacuated. Jim Denny was also taken out by Amtrak late in the afternoon. He faced 11 months in the hospital, but he would keep his leg. That was an excerpt from the book Killing Ground on Okinawa, The Battle for Sugarloaf Hill by James H. Hallas, in the words of James Delbert Denny at a battle at Sugarloaf that took place in 1944. Thank you very much.
As my father, my hero, proud to say, I love him and I miss him.